Hello writers, come write with me. My name is Mykela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Write with Mykela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Before we get into today's video, I want to remind you that Nano Wrimo started on Wednesday, November 1st, and today is the 24th day. So leave a comment below on the word count you have so far. If you haven't written for today, then just leave your word count for November 1st through November 23rd. Now, today is Friday, which is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. If you're writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with permission to WritewithMykela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video. I am looking forward to reading your chapters. Even if I can't read them all on the channel, I want to read them. I want to exchange. That's the fun part. See where your ideas take you. Now, all chapters read on Fridays, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material, and no one may use any part in writing their own stories. And the story is also PG-13. So if you are under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. This story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last story we heard. The title of this story is Tajiia. And today we are reading chapter 16. If you would like to read along, then send to the email I stated above or earlier and request a PDF of the chapter. Make sure you are specific about either City of the Ancients or Tajiia and which chapter. Now, let's start with Tajiia, chapter 16, El Fenton. The commanders of the first group of soldiers halted them an hour or so away from the mountain pass. They sent in a group of scouts. Scouts had torches, and they entered the mountain pass cautiously. Once they entered, they split up as the paths and sides split up. But once they were down to two on a path, they didn't split up anymore. Several witches, warlocks, and one wizard were in various places, including several that were supposed to be sleeping, and several had learned to change their form to various bugs. Waggler was a bee. He didn't intend on stinging anyone, but he also didn't intend on getting squashed either. So when a soldier noticed him and was going to smash him against the wall, Waggler flew off. He didn't fly stably. His flight path wobbled all over the place. The soldier mused that the bee must be drunk, and he and his partner continued. Waggler didn't know where to land. So he flew out of the mountain and onto the plains beyond. He was thinking to find a flower nearby and see if he could listen to the soldier's plans. Suddenly, he could feel he was running low on grains. So he landed and changed back. Mostly, he was too far for the soldiers to see him. But then he remembered wanting to be an elephant to stomp the dogs. So he said the spell and started charging after the group of soldiers. Shuffle had started watching Waggler with an extended eye. Her eye kept extending through the tunnels as he flew on. When he changed back to his normal form, Shuffle gasped. But then she felt movement near her eye. She quickly turned her eye to the right and then left. And then she quickly undid her spell as the soldier to the left of her extended eye was swinging his sword. Shuffle put her hands to face and felt her eyes. That was too close. Then she heard soldiers near her. She said the spell to change herself, and at first she grew into a tree. So she quickly changed the word from tree to rat, and just in time. She saw the soldiers round the corner, and she took off running. She made sure to try to squeak like a rat as well. The soldiers swung their torch towards the noise, but once they saw the fleeing rat, they ignored it. Shaful came out of rat form and skidded into a room with a lot of witches and warlocks. "Waggler is going out there," she exclaimed. Tajiia nodded her head once. "I know. He is an elephant. I read a book last night, and I know how to modify another person's spell. Waggler is an elephant as he wanted, and his clothes are armor as I wanted. Until... Is until a human word?" Several nodded. "Until he releases his spell." Tajiia stood, changed to a bird, and flew out of the room. Shaful watched her go. Then she quickly followed. Several others in the room also followed, but several knew it was important for them to stay. Queens especially wanted to stay, so they could get news and communicate with their groups, and Chancellor stayed to watch the doors to the room. Waggler was running head on into the middle of the soldiers, but then he saw the moonlight glint off blades of steel. He stopped and started swinging his head. He raised up on his hind legs and stomped down. Tajiia landed beside him as a bird, and then changed her being into an elephant, without changing to herself in between. She asked softly, "Why do you think this is how we should approach them?" This startled Waggler, and he paused a moment to glance at Tajiia to his left. He relaxed as he saw an elephant, and then suddenly there were 2 more elephants. He glanced the other way, and elephants were popping up. I'm just so tired of being trampled on." "Let's fly back," suggested Shaful. "We need to plan. We can't afford to act rashly." "I will make an air wall to give us time to change to something that flies," stated Tajiia. She made the wall, and the soldiers could no longer see them, and didn't know what to think. Tajiia stood beside Waggler in her normal form. Waggler changed back to his normal form as he calmed some. He watched the soldiers. Some were sheathing their swords. He looked to his right and saw various witches and warlocks, and the same to his left. These people were not going to let him fight alone, and that gave him great relief. He changed to a bee and headed back into the mountain. The other witches and warlocks followed him. Tajiia was the last to leave. She dropped the air wall before she flew off. Commanders were shouting for the soldiers to stand down and wait until their scouts returned. Tajiia, Waggler, and the rest that had flown out returned to the room. Waggler changed back to his own form, and he was shaking, and tears flowed down his face. He sat down on the cavern floor and put his head in his hands. I just wanted to stomp on them all," he said. "But then I saw their swords, and I remembered all the dogs jumping on me to attack me, and I thought I was going to die. Tajiia saved me again. This time she saved me from myself, from my folly." Arswea tried to calm him as various bugs flew into the room, and then changed into their normal form and gave their reports. Artur asked Tajiia, "Did you get an estimate of the number of soldiers while you were out there?" Tajiia looked over to Artur. "No, but the most that walked through my walls was Sashin Achadin Nucha. I would estimate about Dadin Fra to Tradin total that didn't walk through the walls but walked in between. That is with this group. I estimate around the same with the next group, maybe a few more." Arswea rose from being on one knee and looked at Tajiia. "Tell me I didn't translate those numbers correctly. We only have around 240 or 250 people here. Excuse me. And that's counting children, 3 geese, 1 squirrel, 1 rabbit, and a goat." Artur put a hand on Arswea's shoulder. "I did not do the math before, when Tajiia told us 2 to 3 times. I also didn't think that was for each group of soldiers. Tokrel entered the chamber. Tajiia, dear, I suggest you put air walls inside the mountain. I don't know what all you've tried, but if some soldiers go through one and become small, then we face only the big ones. We will have fewer to deal with at once. Tajiia replied, air walls, yes. But I was going to use Myrk's idea because what happens when they're small and they go somewhere in the mountain where we don't want them to go? Several thought to themselves how Tajiia would come up with such consequences. Several wondered what Myrk's suggestion had been. I wonder if, started Tajiia. Surely Aryan Ab Taj will help me. Surely, replied Artur. Tajiia looked at Artur and asked for a list of where they most certainly didn't want the soldiers to go. And Artur told her. Several others chimed in with, don't forget. Tajiia then placed air walls that would capture soldiers no matter what other spells her air walls had cast on them. She placed these walls in front of several doors to chambers. One chamber was where the children were, and another was for injured or poisoned witches, warlocks, or wizards. Then Tajiia closed her eyes and said several more spells to place air walls throughout the caverns. Then she turned to Waggler and asked, if you somehow changed shape to a dog and then saw yourself in a mirror, what would you do? Started Waggler. Then he paused as everyone looked at him. I might try to run from the dog I saw. She turned to Chancellor Wyckoff. If you were a dog to begin with, what would you do if you saw a dog in the mirror? I certainly wouldn't know the answer to that, stated Chancellor Wyckoff. Are the dogs with the troops? Asked Artur and Arswaya in unison, with Raisler and Tharkek asking seconds behind. No, said Tajiia as she shook her head. I just felt dogs go through an air wall near the village, and several have Waggler's face and no fur. That was an unusual... Is that a human word? Several nodded. That was an unusual interpretation of armorless, stated Tajiia. Shaful laughed behind her hand, and several looked at her. I'm sorry. It's just a hairless dog with Waggler's head. Sounds like it looks really funny. Several agreed and nodded, and momentarily relaxed. All in the room realized that Tajiia was trying things. Several looked at Tokrel. She took making a suggestion to Tajiia as a contest or a test, and maybe the rest of them needed to do that as well, because Tajiia would try the ones she thought would work. The witching community didn't like to kill others unless their lives depended on it. They usually used protection spells. They did this because of two reasons. One was the sanctity of life. The other was because they already had issues with mistrust from normal humans. The witching community had told Tajiia about this set of ethics before she had taken her queen's test. And they knew she understood because she repeated it in witch and then said the universe agreed. They had told her what they normally did for protection and some of the ideas they gained since she had joined them. Now it was time to trust Tajiia to do what she would think to do, as they did their normal things. Still, they kept their minds open for new ideas, and Chancellor Wyckoff was thinking of how he could add speaking with animals as a test for a student. That might be hard, because the animal might not say the same thing to the Chancellor or Queen as it had the student. But still, Tajiia had expected him to know what a real dog would think, and that gave him the idea for the test. Okay, writers, that was another short chapter, and I'm sure we knew Waggler trying the elephant was an interrelated event. But here we see it. Wagler is tired of the soldiers trampling on the witching community, and he wants to trample them. Thankfully, he stopped short and didn't make it to the soldiers. I'm sure the soldiers would have just used their swords against Wagler as an elephant and protected as protection for themselves. They wouldn't have thought fight witches. They would have said, I don't want to die. And they would have fought Wagler with their swords. Leave a comment below on what you would suggest to Tajiia to try with her air walls to use against the soldiers, like Tokrel is trying to suggest, and now some of the others are trying to suggest. So what would you suggest to Tajiia to try to use with her air walls against the soldiers? Join me Tuesday to write more on your cave. Join me Friday for chapter 17 of Tajiia, Battles of Mind and Will. Visit my website, read some character bios, leave a comment on which characters on the website are your favorites so far. I hope you are enjoying writing your stories as much as I am. Don't forget to share your stories by sending them to WritewithMykela@gmail.com. That's the chapter exchange part. You give me your chapter and I give you mine. I read my chapter to you. So we're exchanging chapters here. When you send me your chapter, then I can read it, and if you give me permission, I can read it on the channel. And a lot of people are going to really enjoy hearing your interpretation of the plot versus mine, and they're going to see that I didn't make a detailed plot for us to follow, and the plot was bare bones, so people are going to get to see how much fun that we can have with this, and no polishing is required. I'm going to make a video soon, I think, on an analogy to writing a story, so you kind of understand bare bones plot a little bit more, and you understand polishing and all this kind of stuff. So I think I'm going to add that to when I write the plot. When I pull out the plot for Eleni, I'm going to add something to the beginning of that about, I'm going to give you an analogy for that. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and hit the bell so we can continue to write together. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Mykela with Write with Mykela. Bye for now.